Why have I been holding HEX for the last 5 years? And why do I intend on holding it at least another 10 years? I'm going to explain that in this video right here. You don't have to agree with me, but I see opportunity quite simply where other people don't. And I'm going to tell you what I think the opportunity still is on the table. HEX is a coin that has a history of going up 10,000x in the past. In the last cycle, the founder was very controversial for talking about the potential of the price, because a lot of people are scared to talk about the price potential in crypto, even though secretly it's the only thing people care about. And why am I still here? After HEX went up for 2 years, up 10,000x of a multiple from bottom to top, but then it went down 98%. So we're sitting at a negative 98% loss. Why have I not just given up? Like, I'll tell you what I see, and it's your decision what you do at the end of the day. I don't really care. There's other people out there that are going to see the opportunity, and then a lot of people simply won't until the prices are higher. But these dynamics are what creates every single FOMO top. Every single blow-off FOMO buying spree from retail. It's just quite simple. People like buying things when they're already high. They like confirmation bias, right? They want the candles to go up 10x or 20x already before they feel safe to get in. And no one's cheering for you at the all-time lows or near the lows. I shouldn't say all-time lows because the thing about HEX is that compared to the all-time lows, believe it or not, some people are still up a very large multiple if they were buying in that initial 6-month period over here. So you can see the HEX chart of all time. And if you're new to this channel, if you're new to the concept of HEX, maybe you've heard of it, but you want more info, we can't really talk about HEX without talking about the founder's other creations. People like to group these 4 tokens together because they're heavily liquidity bonded. If you don't know what that means, just subscribe to me. You'll start to pick it up after a couple videos. All of these tokens basically go up and down together. When one of them pumps, they all pump because they're all tied to each other via liquidity pools. And these are all the founder's creations. So when it comes to the PulseChain network, HEX, PulseX, INC, and PLS, the gas token, they all have the biggest mind share, the biggest brand name recognition on PulseChain. Everybody else is just fighting for basically scraps. I mean, basically the leftover money is flowing into the endless meme coin rotation, and that's okay. Every chain is going to have that. But what's evolved right now is that these are called the core coins. If you hear me talk about them as core, that's what I mean. So they're the founder's creation, and part of why I got in the first place, and part of why I'm still here, is due to the founder himself having a very strong pitch and building very solid tech, in addition to the community. So founder, community, tech. All right, these 3 things, they're pretty solid. And that's the biggest information asymmetry I see with a lot of people. They don't understand that the founder is not giving up by any stretch of the imagination. The founder used to live stream a lot, and he used to be very audacious. And he got himself into an SEC lawsuit because basically HEX got so much attention and it went up so much that it drew eyeballs from people that thought he was a scammer. Now, I know he looks like a scammer. If you want to watch my video, Is Richard Heart a Scammer? The founder of PulseChain. Link is right above here if you want to click on that one. But I'm not going to talk about that, assuming he's not. Because he did beat the SEC in court, by the way. Richard Heart did declare total victory against the SEC, which tried to sue him and his products. The only lawsuit to ever sue software code, HEX, PulseChain, and PulseX, these 3 tokens right here, were sued by the SEC. In a case that we've never seen before in cryptocurrency. We've never seen them try to actually sue decentralized code. It really demonstrated a lack of understanding on the SEC's part of what these were. But Richard Heart claimed a total victory. Okay, he fought the SEC and won. He fought basically the final boss of crypto, and now that we have this legal clarity for these 3 tokens, INC wasn't mentioned in the lawsuit. Okay, it's just fun to throw in there. But these 3 tokens have legal clarity that no other tokens in the entire USA have, because they specifically have a case where allegations were brought against them, and the allegations were dismissed for lack of jurisdiction and failure to state a claim. Meaning the SEC had no power over them jurisdictionally, and even if they did, and even if everything the SEC said was true, nothing in that case was enough to allege any fraud actually happened. Because the guy basically did what he said he was going to do. He built the products he said he was going to build. He didn't take a whole bunch of money and just run away with it. Now look, the price of coins goes up and down, yes. And crypto is the most volatile asset in all of history, but it also goes up more than everything else in the long run. It has way more price potential, and we're not afraid to admit that. But just because something goes up and down a lot does not make it a scam. That's just a market bubble of people aping into something, getting very overly excited, over exuberance. And part of the reason HEX is down so much for so long is because it went so high so quickly. So we have a lot of steam to blow off. And we're seeing that on this 3 to even 4 year now refractory period, this prolonged dip. And if you look at the chart on the log scale, you'll see this dip right here. We're actually going to change it to the new version of HEX on PulseChain. So the new version of HEX, it has dipped quite a bit. But you'll see compared to the early days, right, the first, oh, I don't know, 6 months or so, some people bought pretty low. And some people are still actually up, believe it or not, like a 50x from near the all-time lows, maybe even 60 or 70x. And part of what you get with a chart like this is it's very transparent, and there's no VCs with unlock schedules, vesting schedules. There's no market makers, there's no OTC deals, there's no exchange listings. This is a purely crypto retail market, and I believe that's why it's so transparent, and that's why the price is so volatile, because you are getting a petri dish of retail. Retail is highly emotional, and there's no real big players in this ecosystem yet. All it would take would be like a couple to really pump this thing sky high, which I'll get into later. But like I said, there's no traditional stuff that a lot of the more mature assets like Bitcoin and Ethereum have. See, they have all this stuff like OTC, derivatives markets, leverage, trading on centralized exchanges, market makers, big hedge funds and investors, people protecting the price and doing all these strategies. With PulseChain, and HEX is a token that lives on the PulseChain network, the price of all these tokens is like what you see is what you get. And because all the volume is done on chain, it's highly transparent. That also means it's highly susceptible to people's emotions, people's fear and greed. That's why it pumps so hard and it dumps so hard. It's extreme volatility. A lot of people don't have the stomach for this, and we're seeing that with the multi-year shakeout. Some people don't think it's ever going to come back, and that's okay. No one's forcing you to be here. If there's people that want to sell, a lot of them already have. But if you're looking at it from a new perspective, like if you're a new guy coming in and you're wondering, why are people still here? Why have they held this thing for so long? Why have I been holding it for 5 years? And why do I have HEX stakes locked in, time locked for the next 10 years? Maybe even longer. I got to go back and check. I've time locked my HEX such that if I break the time lock early, I get heavily penalized. And a lot of other people have. And we could see this chart right here speaks volumes about the underlying belief of the core group of believers. There's 123,000 stakers. Now, this doesn't actually represent 123,000 people, but let's say it represents 20,000 people. In my opinion, that's critical mass, because you've got a locked-in group of believers, locked for an average of, it says 9.1 years. Now, we could criticize this number because the origin address made stakes. Let's just call it maybe 7 years, realistically. Still an incredibly long time for people to be voting with their money on their belief in the system. Because the thing about HEX staking is that it's penalized. It's staking with consequences. So you can't just stake it and unstake it. Right? If you stake your HEX, you get more HEX. It helps you delay gratification, right? It helps people basically with their psychology. It helps people hold things through turbulent times, through high volatility, because they know, well, at least I'm going to have some more HEX in the future when I think HEX goes back up. And that's my belief and a lot of others as well. Why would it go back up? Well, the low liquidity and the transparency of the retail-friendly market, these two things make for huge swings to the upside and huge to the downside. But I see no reason that that can't happen again, especially when HEX essentially relaunched on a new blockchain. So if you're new to HEX, if you're new to PulseChain, PulseChain is like Ethereum, and HEX and PulseX are like applications built on top of PulseChain. So all these coins, Inc, PulseX, HEX, they're built on top of PulseChain. Just like on Ethereum, you've got all these coins built on top of Ethereum. That's kind of how blockchains work. You've always got the network layer token, okay? PulseChain, Ethereum, Bitcoin, these are network layer. And then you've got the coins built on the network. Like these are like the cars driving on the road, okay? And remember, I'm talking about all three of these things together because they are bonded. And the liquidity is what matters. The mathematics of how pumpable things are. I think that's something that people don't look at enough. When you consider that there's maybe like 6 to 8, maybe $10 million backing this entire chain in terms of USD value, it truly is low liquidity, and this is by design. Bigger pumps and bigger dumps. If you're familiar with liquidity from traditional finance, we're talking about a hyper low liquid asset. Now, why would I want to be in something with this low of liquidity? Well, again, we have a track record of what low liquidity can do. Low liquidity can cause a few tens of millions of dollars to pump HEX sky high. This is what happened in 2020 and 2021. Looks like a pretty big pump, right? This was 11,178% of a rise. But now let's look what happened, okay? HEX obviously dipped a lot, and now this is the old version of HEX on Ethereum. It basically went right back down to where it started. But like I said, HEX relaunched on a new chain, and the new chain has a price of HEX that's at about half a penny. Okay. Still very, very low compared to the all-time high. So everyone talks about it being down. That's obvious, okay? We all know it's down. All the holders understand that the price is down. Okay. And again, some people see this as opportunity because they remember what was possible with pretty little liquidity in the grand scheme. At these conditions up here on the top, there was maybe $50 million of liquidity. Now today backing HEX, there's maybe 2-3 million. And backing the rest of the ecosystem like 6 million. So again, knowing that we can get back to this point, knowing that there's more money in crypto in general now, means if the floodgates open up, there's just a higher addressable market that's already in crypto. Not to mention all the new people that are going to be joining over the next 2, 3, 4 years as crypto takes over the world, just like the internet did. Now look, if I click the log chart here, look what a difference this makes, right? That's why sometimes we do click the log chart, because it shows the exponential growth, and it shows you that I didn't even capture people that bought in the super early days. So let's say you bought in over here, you know, you'd be up, what's that, 177,000%. That's 1,770x. So for every dollar you put in, you'd have $1,770. It's insane if you bought it over here. Okay, so that's why some people still are up, and some people obviously are way down. And some people that are way down have decided, I think it's coming back. Some people that are way down have decided to leave. And that's really the only decision you have to make. Now remember, this is the chart of HEX on Ethereum. And HEX on Ethereum, I mean, it's going to be around forever. You can't really get rid of it because it's immutable. But there's a new HEX, and it's HEX on the PulseChain network. So when HEX relaunched, we've got a chart that basically looks like this. Range bound and sideways for the past 2 years. Incredibly boring. But again, why have people been here the whole time? I'm only one of many. And why have this group of people been here the whole time? 123,000 stakers, maybe a couple tens of thousands of people, an average of, let's call it 7 years. Again, that's a very important number. That's huge for people to believe in something. When the average life cycle of a meme coin, you know, people are holding for a couple weeks or a couple months, and they rotate to the next thing endlessly. That's what crypto has really devolved into, is this pump and dump meme coin casino where, because there's a lack of new people coming in, and people are bored, it's become player versus player, PvP. Meaning without new demand, we're all trying to take each other's money, basically. Everyone's shuffling the money around, and that's just the way things are. But new people are coming in. They're trickling in, just not at the extreme levels that we saw so far, you know, that we saw back in 2021. Now, will this retail FOMO mania come again? I'm betting yes. Crypto's been cyclical for the last 15 years of its existence, all right? Bitcoin's been through 4 cycles. We're on its 5th right now. Ethereum's on its 3rd cycle. So we know this comes in cycles. We know that technology is not going anywhere. It's immutable, which means you cannot shut it off. Nobody can shut it off. There's no centralized middleman behind it. And that leads me into the technology component. All right, so we talked about the founder. We talked about him beating the SEC. But what did he design? He designed immutable blockchain code that is decentralized to the point where there's nodes all across the world running PulseChain, running the PulseChain software. And these nodes running the PulseChain software make it a decentralized ecosystem. You could see all across the globe. You know, we could flip this around. Europe, Asia, wherever you are, Australia, South America. You can't shut off everyone's node at the same time. This is what makes blockchains powerful. And this is what makes me certain that from a fundamental point of view, you know, HEX has never had a bug. PulseX has never had a bug. It's been 5 years for HEX, right? If something bad was going to happen, probably would have happened by now if there was a bug in the code or an exploit, right? And this code's been audited, right? These are all clones of Ethereum, which has had a ton of eyeballs on it. PulseX is a clone of Uniswap, which has had a ton of eyeballs and audits. HEX had 2 security audits and 1 economics audit. So a lot of people have looked at this, and it's basically just a vault that is sealed shut that no one can take off the internet. Now that it's launched, as long as we have civilization, a functioning society, we're going to have functioning blockchains like Pulse, and HEX and PulseX are like the vaults that live on top of the blockchain that can't be broken into. They can't be deleted. They can't be taken down. No government can take them down, right? That's one of the most powerful aspects of the technology itself. So for people that are scared or skeptical about crypto and somebody shutting it off, you know, they tried, right? The SEC sued a lot of people in the past couple of years. And if they could have shut it off, they probably would have. in a lot of cases, but they can't because it's not in their control. And now, luckily, the government, especially the government in the US, is finally coming around to being very friendly to crypto, at least right now. And so the regulatory environment is great, super bullish. And if it wasn't, that would suck. But we know for a fact that HEX, PulseChain, and Pulse are immutable code and decentralized, running on nodes across the world, just like Bitcoin, just like Ethereum, just like how if people wanted to take Bitcoin down, they would have by now if they could. Not to mention there's financial incentives to things like Bitcoin, right? Nobody wants to just like stop and ruin the game for everyone because it's game theory, right? If everyone's financially invested in Bitcoin, then there's really even less economic incentive to destroy the useful thing that so many people think that, well, I can just make money by buying this stuff, waiting until it goes up. Why would I want to destroy it? And even when there was critical bugs, like there were in Bitcoin in the early days, they just forked around it. They updated the code, they patched it, and they launched a new version, basically, of the blockchain without the bug. So we have a lot of track history for how secure these are. Even at the end of the day, if they're just socially enforced networks, like we saw with Bitcoin, even Ethereum had a bug. And again, they just patched the bug and they made a new version of Ethereum. So that part of the existential risk of crypto, there's always going to be, okay, what if there's a meteor? What if the internet goes down? Then we've got a lot bigger problems. But we've seen this technology be battle tested. And we know that HEX, PulseChain, and PulseX are just iterations of technology that already works. So that side is good to go. Not to mention they're pretty cool tokenomics with buy and burn functions. HEX has time locking, pays you to stake. PulseChain is a cheaper, faster Ethereum. With fee burning, it's actually getting very scarce and deflationary nowadays. I could get into all the value props, but I've got so many other videos about that, so just follow me if you want to hear that. The community itself is also another aspect, and remember, that community is locked in. So part of why they're still here is because they're locked in, and there's this emergent property of when you get all these people locked in, it forms a diehard, almost cult-like community. Some people call it a cult. It's just a passionate group of individuals that are trying to spread the word. And look, if they haven't gone anywhere at 98% down, let's say you want to just take PHEX alone, right? We could always take the bad negative framing. We could say, okay, well, PHEX, it's down 83% from its all-time high of 3 cents. Sure, that's not great, but is this an opportunity to buy? Because we know it's possible, we know it could come back. Remember how I talked about the liquidity situation as well? Remember how I told you there's maybe $6 to $8 million total liquidity back in the entire ecosystem? Imagine 10 millionaires getting together and agreeing to each put $1 million into this chain. And they could pump this chain when the market gets a little frothier, when the market turns around. There's still a lot of fear in the market. Okay, Ethereum is still 50% down from where it was 4 years ago. Ethereum, the number 2 cryptocurrency. I think all that's about to change massively. Again, regulations, ETFs, everything is lining up perfectly. It's just a matter of when, not if. But because this is truly a retail market in PulseChain, you could have like 10 rich guys get together and just decide, just for fun, to just pump the crap out of this chain. And I'm willing to guess that they could take out more money than they put in by causing a FOMO buying spree. So I've got all the mathematics of how this works. And I talk about this on videos, but if we go to pampy.app, the price simulator is something I love to show people because let's say, all these coins are tied. When one goes up, it drags all the other ones up with them. However, what if we only wanted to put, let's talk about those 10 millionaire guys, right? Those 10 millionaires, hypothetically, for a laugh, they put in $1 million each. So they put in a net buy pressure of $10 million. Of course, we don't live in a vacuum. There's other people buying and selling the whole time. But if we calculate how high this would pump HEX and all the other coins that are tied to it, 94x, the new price of HEX would be near previous all-time highs at 45 cents. And everything else would go up to 6x along the way. If nobody else bought PulseX, if nobody else bought Pulse or Inc., which they would, in theory, because they'd want to go buy it to go chase other meme coins and all the new shiny objects. This is how that people say, oh, well, you missed out on this coin. Well, get this new one. And it's a pump and dump meme coin, but whatever, people don't care. And Pulse is the gateway drug for all that. People need Pulse to buy HEX and PulseX because it's the gas token and it's the main liquidity pair for every token on the network, just like ETH is on Ethereum. So if one coin goes up really high, it doesn't even matter if it's HEX or PulseX. It spurs FOMO buying, whether or not people are just chasing the tops of the core coins or they're buying more Pulse to go degen and gamble on shiny new objects because they feel like they missed the boat. This happens time and time again. I've just seen the pattern so many times. Even last year, December 2024, look, we saw HEX go from zero point 0.3 cents to 3 cents. That's almost a 10x, right? Back in September, December of 2024. And that's just a little taste, in my opinion, of what's possible. Look, you've got these diehard fanatics, and there are a group of people that are starting to look at crypto as a lifestyle asset as well. These people are locked in for 7 years on average because a lot of them realize that when the world fully transitions to crypto one day, it's not going to become a niche thing anymore. It's going to be mainstream one day. And so people really are thinking that far ahead. They're called delusional right now. People definitely call them delusional. And you're only delusional until you're right. And so if people never come back to HEX, let's say in the next 5 years, maybe that'd be considered a failure, okay? But it seems unreasonable that it wouldn't pump at least a little bit. And even if it only gets back to its all-time high, that's an over 50x ROI multiple, which seems like it would be silly not to take at least a scratcher bet, especially if you're a wealthier individual and you understand how easily this market can be manipulated. Right? Manipulation is just buying and selling, but a big whale can come in and manipulate the price to the upside even quicker than all the retail FOMO buyers back from 2021 slowly gave up hope and sold along the way down. Okay. And a lot of people took profit, right? A lot of people extracted a lot of profit in this past 3 years since the top in September 2021, right? Now we're coming up on maybe 3.5, almost 4 years of down. But have we found a bottom? Right? Remember, this is the EHEX chart. I'm talking about the PHEX chart now. I'm much more interested on HEX on PulseChain. And the prices don't look good, but this is what happens when you have purely retail, no VCs. You've got people that, one, made a lot of money and are taking profit, and two, you've got people that just bought the FOMO and they aped into PulseChain and PulseX as well, thinking it would be an overnight success just like HEX was. Well, clearly, because a lot of those people had expectations of short-term success, it's going to take even longer before we can go back up. But as long as you think it will go back up, I'm positioned here because it's a lower liquidity ecosystem, again, with that community and with that technology that I know is not going anywhere. Now, you could buy things that make you feel better about it. Like Solana probably has a better, more corporate image, a more venture capital-based kind of techie vibe. They do have a lot of money to throw around, but what's got more price potential, right? I do think Solana maybe could do a 10x from here. But then what would PulseChain do? What would PulseChain do if the whole markets were exuberant enough to send something with super high liquidity up 10x? What would that do to the super low liquidity thing? You know, if even a fraction of Ethereum's daily volume, Ethereum does billions of dollars a day in volume, and it's got multiple millions, if not billions in liquidity on chain. So imagine if even 0.1%, a super conservative number of 0.1% of the liquidity of Ethereum flowed into PulseChain, then yeah, 100x is possible. And because it's possible, even if 100x is only 50% likely, it's still a bet that I'm personally going to take because it's a huge outsized reward for, well, at this point, not much more to lose. Knock on wood. Of course, everything could go to zero. Sure. But we have held at an excruciatingly painful low for the past, really, it feels like 2 years. Right? We've had pumps along the way, but we're near some low points right now. It doesn't feel good. But if everyone just bought when they felt good, like you wouldn't get any reward because you're not taking any risk. And here's one final trend that I want to leave people with. You know, if you look at DEXs on chain, right? This is like people using the PulseX decentralized exchange versus people using SEXs, which are like Coinbase, right? Coinbase, Binance, centralized exchanges versus decentralized exchanges. Well, DEX has hit a record high of 25% of the share of total spot trading volume. And this is a trend that's going up, okay? Look, in 2024, it was about 13%. It's doubled to 27% just in June 2025. So the future is on chain. People are moving on chain. They're moving all their liquidity, all their money. We see billions of dollars of stable coins being printed on Tron or Base or Ethereum itself. This trend I expect to continue, which just gives more opportunity to capture some of that overflow from the greater crypto markets as a whole. So it's like you have a huge bucket of water, of potential, of liquidity on chain, and this bucket is getting filled up by the ocean, which is like the world's money. And then you've got a tiny little Dixie cup, which is PulseChain's liquidity, right? And so you think if just a little splash of that bucket came into my tiny little Dixie cup, it would start overflowing, right? The cup would have to get so much bigger to account for even a tiny little spill overflow of the bucket of on-chain liquidity. And then when you factor in the fact that there's, an entire lake or maybe an entire ocean out there of money in all kinds of things. Derivatives got quadrillions of dollars. Gold, cash, equities, trillions and trillions of dollars. That flows into crypto. That crypto liquidity flows into our tiny little microcosm over here. So being small, it's the blessing and the curse, but it's what causes all the potential. So that's why I'm still in HEX. That's why I'm still in PulseChain and Pulse. It's an oversimplified version. I could go more in depth about everything. Also, let's not forget the legal clarity of the SEC allegations being dropped and dismissed by the founder who also beat the case. So you've got this perfect setup, in my opinion. Let's see how it plays out. That's why I'm taking a bet on it. That's why I'm still locked in for the next 10 years. I have to see how this plays out. Okay, I have to see what happens. I would be living a lifetime of regret if I did not stick around long enough to see the glory and the true potential of what this ecosystem could do one day. Make sure you like, subscribe, share the video, leave a comment, and if you're brand new to crypto, I will teach you all the basics, terminology, mindset, strategy, how to buy, how to sell, all the stuff that as a newbie, I wish I had. Would have saved me tons of money and mistakes, months, maybe years of time. HEXPassiveIncome.com, link below. Do check that out because now is the time. The time to care about a potential multiple ROI investment is not when you're feeling the FOMO. It's when everyone hates it. It's when everyone's depressed. It's potentially a good idea to take a look when prices are at a 90-something% discount. See you on the next one.